Okay, so it's entitled Learning Beyond the Exam, Enrichment, Electives and Qualifications Pathways. But we're going to just lay a little bit of foundation to begin with, talking about the kind of traditional UK exam pathway. Um, so we'll be looking at the UK pathway, but also the US pathway, which is becoming increasingly popular with home educators in the UK and in other countries outside of the US. And we're going to be thinking about what are the pros and cons of each. So there's many different routes to take to that end goal, the academic end goal of home education. There's the traditional route of IGCSEs, GCSEs, and for Scottish students, National Fives. There could be the US High School Diploma and SAT. Some families don't do any of these, and then when their child gets to 16, they look at the local college route. There's apprenticeships, but I know that some people think, oh, we'll do apprenticeships, but be even at an early stage in high school, be really mindful of what you need to gain access to that apprenticeship. Most apprenticeships need some kind of entry qualifications, whether that just be a basic kind of English, maths, a science. Very few apprenticeships require nothing, so that is something to be really mindful of. You don't just jump in there at age 16. There might be some things you need to do. And Open University is a really popular pathway for a lot of families where they do their do school, they do their home education, and they get to 18. I think or 16, I
16.
think 16.
16.
16, and they jump into entry level at Open University, go from zero to a degree that route. Okay, what are the options for family? I'm just going to move the camera things out the way because I can't see. There we go. Um, what if your teen doesn't want to go to university, which is an increasingly popular route for many students? They don't want the debt. They There is a lot of discussion in academia about the value of degrees. And so it's not even for very bright students, it's no longer the kind of the automatic route of qualifications and then jumping into university. Colleges also have a range of qualifications that might be adequate for what your teenager wants to do. So look at those different routes. There's a lot of specialized colleges that do really bespoke classes and qualifications that go down a really bespoke pathway. Local colleges often have apprenticeship training programs which give you a doorway into apprenticeships. There's a huge drive now in the idea of modern apprenticeships. If you can go to the government website on modern apprenticeships, and they come in different tiers. So there's the foundational tier, which is for home educators could be quite challenging to get into because it's often linked to schools programs. So um, schools will feed into these foundation apprenticeships, which are delivered through colleges. But because the school is the gatekeeper, it can be really hard for home educated teens to gain access to those courses. I spoke to a man in a local college just this year about this. They said theoretically this should not be something that is barred for home educators. It should be equal access for all, but that's just not the case, just with the practicalities of how to work that out. So if there's a specific apprenticeship that your teen is looking at, go to the local college, look at what they have as foundational college apprenticeships, and start speaking to them when your teenagers around about 14, 15. Look for open days in the college, look for apprenticeship open days, and do this kind of these sorts of things happen at the beginning of the year. So it's well in advance of like the end of summer. So ask questions well in advance. Trying to make those connections with your local college will help with that. So much of these things is if you just go on the route of going on their website, filling out the application and hoping for the best, that's it's sometimes a lot better to have that face to face or that personal contact with the people who's involved in these, specifically if you're coming from a non-traditional route into college courses or the foundational apprenticeships. Modern apprenticeships is there are so many jobs that are now being taught as apprenticeships that used to be more traditionally degrees or other routes. So if you look on the Modern Apprenticeship website that the government has produced, there is such a huge, diverse array of apprenticeship options, which is really popular now with so many young people because they can earn money whilst they are learning and gaining those qualifications. For teens who do go to university, there's also graduate apprenticeships which are linked to university degrees, and so a lot more quite professional jobs are offering this route too. As I said before, most apprenticeships have minimum qualifications, even things like, say, a plumber. They would want a basic qualification in maths, a basic qualification in English, so basic numeracy and literacy, and a basic kind of science qualification. These are so key on so many of the apprenticeships. These are kind of your entry level, but you can gain those entry level qualifications through a college route. Another option that a lot of home educators do is to start their own business or to go straight into the workplace. Just home education almost all often lends itself to quite an entrepreneurial mindset. So many home educators will maybe start a wee side hustle in their teens and that grows into a bigger business, or that if you've got a family business, your teen might come into that with you, and your own business as a parent ends up becoming a legacy piece for your whole family, which is really quite exciting. Um, so for families who want to do exams and want to go down that more traditional route, generally for UK home educators, IGCSEs are the best because most GCSEs require coursework. And these are the things that are hard to evidence as home educators. There are exam centres that can, but it racks up money. So IGCSEs typically, there are a few exceptions where this isn't the case. IGCSEs are typically all exam based and you don't need that coursework element. For international students, the Cambridge International IGCSEs and International A levels are recommended because Cambridge Exam Board has exam centres globally. Most major capital cities across the world have a Cambridge International Exam Centre. And so, whereas some of the other UK exam boards like Edexcel, AQA, they're smaller, they don't have that same global reach. So if you're doing, regardless of where you're taking exams, the first step is to actually, it's this kind of back engineering it. Is there an exam centre close to or in a distance that you're happy travelling to that you can sit the exam you want? So looking what are my local exam centres and what exam boards do they, can you sit in those exam centres? And that then gives you like, so if you've got an exam centre and they only do Edexcel, you're going to look at the Edexcel courses. Um, Ask around in your local home ed communities and support groups, where does other families sit exams? What boards do they allow? Is a good starting place to go with that. Check out the prices between exam centres because there can be variations. So you come to pick your board based on the exam centre, and at that point, that's when you would start looking for curriculum. So you've got this big kind of back engineering, and that curriculum could be buying the textbook and doing it together as a family, or your teen working through that textbook. And a lot of teenagers cope really well with that and do really, really well self-teaching that content. For some families, it'll be maybe a self-paced online course. For some families, the best option is an online class like we have at Arise, where it's live and there's a tutor with a tutor interaction, and you work through the course that way. And some families, if the finances allow, they will employ a private tutor to go through that material, but that is probably the most expensive way to do it. Shannon.
So before you jump to the next piece here, I just want to give a little plug for tutors and exams. We're approved with them. And so if you choose to use tutors and exams for the exam center, they're mostly in England. I'm not sure if they're down into Wales, but I know they're in England and as far north as Newcastle. So it would be a little bit of a trek for those of us up in Scotland. But they are UK based and they will have a coupon code that will give you a discount off the prices and that kind of thing if you choose to use them as your exam center.
The other thing to note with that is some exam centres will do accommodations. So if you've got a child that's dyslexic or has some other kind of learning challenges and need extra time, some exam centres offer that. And tutors, I believe tutors and exams do,
Mhm.
some don't. The other thing with tutors and exams, they're starting to do remote invigilation.
Yeah.
It comes with a price tag, but that's something I that is becoming available. So if you're really remote, or if your
Yeah.
child has anxiety, just could not cope sitting in an exam center, that is an option that tutors and exams have, which is if it makes things a bit more accessible. Also
Yeah.
for subjects like languages. Again, you need an exam center that can do the different components for that. So just these are all the kind of your legwork when you're looking at exam centers and what they have and what they offer. Um, what if you want to go to university but you don't want to go down the traditional exam route? So as I mentioned before, Open University goes from zero qualifications to a degree, and a lot of families really like that option. Um, there's a lot of flexibility, and it's worked really well with so many families. Their young people have came out with really good degrees and have actually gone on and had. I think that there's almost a snobbery with Open University, and there's adults out there that have done this route of Open University from zero to nothing, and they went on to have very professional, academic, rich course careers off the back of that. So it is a really viable option.
Yeah. They have the rigor now of a
Yeah,
proper brick and mortar university. They've been around more than 20 years. They are everywhere. They do have, low level certificate type of things, but you just build one course at a time. And you go as far as you want to,
yeah.
with a lot of variety. They also have this new idea of, I call it pick and mix, but it's where you kind of get to build your own degree. So if you're really passionate about two things or three things or how, I'm not quite sure what number they put the limit on, but you can build it together to kind of make this really bespoke degree with them if they offer courses in those areas that you're looking at rather than the traditional maths or physics or medicine or engineering or whatever. You can really slice and dice, and so that's pretty cool about them. There's other universities that are doing that too, but Open University is, I think, the most flexible that I've seen so far.
They also, if you're in Scotland, you can do SAS funding with the Open
Yeah.
University as well. Many universities offer online access courses. That's becoming increasingly popular. I know Aberdeen, I think St Andrews do in Scotland, and they'll be similarly in England. So check out those as ways of gaining access to different courses. And the other option, which we're going to go into more detail, is USA qualifications for UK students, which we're going to come to in a little minute. So we're not going to talk about that too much. Before we go into the US model, I just want to kind of touch base on electives. So electives are subjects that you are not going to lead to a UK exam. So some families might think, well, what's the point? What's the point of doing them if you're not going to get a qualification that you could take to a university? Bear in mind that some electives you can get some kind of award or recognition that you can put on a UCAS form. It might not be a GCSE or an A level, but it has UCAS points assigned to it. Um, Apart from that, it also looks really good on a personal statement. It shows that you're a well-rounded person and you've got all these other interests. And there's a lot of rigor in a lot of these awards. So things like the Art Award, which has all the different levels up to gold. The Gold Award has UCAS points associated with it. Speech and Drama Awards, again, like the Art Award, they're both accredited by Trinity College London. Again, it's recognised by UCAS. Things like the music awards that you have with like the A, B, R, S, M, so when you do grades of music, these also they have UCAS points. The higher you go, they have these UCAS points. I'm sure their grade 6 theory is equivalent. It's on the equivalent level to GCSE music, the kind of that level. And I know that you can't go progress up the levels if you don't have that theory course. So if you've got a very musical child, going that route, getting the ABRSM awards is a really good option. So for if you've got a science kid, the Crest Award, the gold level, again, it's recognized as with UCAS points if you get that gold Crest Award. There's a lot of work in that. It's a really rigorous um award and well worth pursuing if your child loves science.
Another one to add there, Emma, is that we just missed out. I only just thought of it now, and I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier because my kids have done it. And that's the Heritage Award, which is history and archaeology based. And that as well has the different levels like the Art Award or the Crest Award does. And I'm sure if you're doing the top level, you're going to get UCAS points with
Yeah.
that as well. But that one is worth looking into if you have a history archaeology type of person in the family that wants to pursue that.
As I said, it shows this well-rounded individual, so supporting your learning, supporting personal development. It also allows that space to continue with interest-led learning. If you've got this child is taking a history for an example who loves history and they're doing their GCSE history, they're doing the A-level history, they're doing all the history things they could possibly find. But then having that heritage award on top of it, it shows that level of intention in pursuing that topic. A lot of electives can also develop critical thinking skills and faith development. So we have it arise. Some of our electives are things like apologetics and debate, which is amazingly rich. It's rich in the enforcement of faith, being able to defend the faith, but also teaching logic and how to debate well and how to think well. My own boys who have done that, it's really shored up a lot of their English skills and essay writing skills, even though that's not the purpose of the class. It's really helped them be able to think through arguments well. Although electives may not lead to a UK exam, they all can be put on a US transcript. So this is part of the beauty of the US route, which Shannon's going to discuss in a minute. We have 32 elective and enrichment courses. So these are all courses which they're electives, they're not those kind of core four, but and they don't lead to like an IGCSE or higher or A level or whatever UK qualification you want to pull. But some of them are awards and some of them aren't awards. So things like our logic, debate, and apologetics report writing classes. So there's four of these, and our logic classes this year we've got intro to logic for that kind of lower secondary age child, and it goes right up to Agnes's apologetics worldview class, which is really aimed more at that upper secondary, but they're talking about really quite deep and difficult subjects that we encounter in culture and coming to it from, well, what do we look at this? How do we look at this from a Christian perspective? How do we talk to these things that are really quite hard? And Agnes does that so well. But starting off at that learning the kind of fallacy laws down in the logic class and how to recognize logical fallacies and arguments. Her classes have been so popular. I think everyone I've heard talking about them has found them really transformative for their teens.
Yeah.
Then we've got nine kind of artsy electives from art history, photography, and the various levels of the art awards. Foreign language, so we've got seven foreign language classes. Um, we don't have IGCSE, but these would all be able to go on to a US transcript. Entry level French, Spanish, German, and
Latin,
Latin are
Hebrew.
Hebrew. So, but Hebrew is a
Oh,
GCSE, so
Hebrew
that
is
is
GCSE. You're right. I may or may not have counted that in there. You're right.
So yeah, so we've got all the languages. PE and health, that is one of our self-paced classes. Speech and drama, so they start at level
Four.
four, then five, and level six. I think that's where you can start putting on a UCAS form
Yeah, you get
for,
points. You get GCSE level, but in a point um, at level 6,
and
and then upward from there.
that's accredited by Trinity College. Career prep as well as an elective that Shannon takes, and we're just starting to move out into clubs. So we've got a cookery club and more coming soon. So yeah, many of these are eligible for US high school diploma, but not suitable for the UK exams. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Shannon, who's going to talk more
Oh,
about the US qualifications and the high school transcript and SAT.
all right, awesome. So if you guys have questions before we step into the qualification, the US pathway here, if you have questions about anything that we've talked about so far, put them in the chat and we will swing back around to those and take time for those at the end. And then maybe Emma's able even just to answer quickly sometimes in the chat. But if there's ones we want to discuss, we'll bring all of those up at the end. All right. So for the US qualification pathway, it is it's a unique pathway, but it's really, really doable for UK and international. When I'm saying UK, I don't want those that might listen or watch that are from other parts of the world think they can't do this as well because they can. There are just ways to look at it really differently. But for our purposes, I'll be speaking with my UK hat on with it. So in general, when you're looking at qualifications for a US high school transcript, you need to remember that high school in the US starts at age 14. It goes 14 to 18. Okay. So, and that confuses people sometimes because secondary is also called high school in the UK, and it's not really American high school until you're 14. So, if in your mind you think GCSE and A levels, then you have the right age reference point for US high school. So 14 and plus. I will say though that there are some subjects and some high school coursework that it can be done when a student is 13, so they're in those lower secondary years. But because of the rigor of it, maybe it's a subject that they are exceptional in and they are ahead. And it won't be for every subject, but you'll be able to see where their gifting is at. And quite often, that will be where they can start um, a U.S. high school rigor earlier than normal and get those US high school credits before they hit 14 and onward. So when you're looking at the different things there, you have your English, science, math, social studies, and PE health, and then electives. We talked about electives, so we won't do too much more on that. But they want to see 4 years of English, 3 or more years of science, 3 to 4 years of math, 3 years of social studies, and equivalent over the course of the 4 years, 2 years of physical education. Typically, it's kind of doled out a half a credit a year so that there's physical education and health in every year of their schooling. And so roughly you're looking for at a baseline of about 24 credits. That's going to be the general baseline, no matter what state you're looking at or coming from. And we won't go down the rabbit trail of different states having different numbers. So we'll just stick with this nice round number here of 24. That's your basic, but that's not generally enough to get you into a UK university. They're going to want to see 24 or more credits, and they're going to want to look at the type of classes that have been taken. And so that's where it gets really important to look at what the universities, it's that same backward engineering that Emma talked about for exam centers. It's kind of the same idea when you're looking at what are the qualifications for the degree I want to pursue or the vocation I want to pursue when I'm looking at it from a US qualification perspective, and then figuring out how many credits you're going to need and what classes they might require. So let's go ahead and move forward. That's what it is in brief. When we're looking at transcripts, transcripts is just a whole term for those in the UK that is really, it's a bit foreign, and that's okay. It's not, it's essentially a piece of paper or a record. I guess supposedly now they're digital and that kind of thing. But it's a record basically of the academic accomplishments in high school. So that's generally again from 14 to 18. That record, they'll have a transcript for those lower, what in America we would call middle school. They'll have a record and a transcript for those years as well, but they don't count when you're looking at university entrance. Okay. So that's why it's really important that you are doing US high school rigor, not, the lower secondary rigor for classes for your 14 to 18-year-olds. It's going to be given for every class they take. It's going to tell when it was taken and the grade that was received for that class. It will typically give a letter grade and then a GPA. We'll talk about those things in a minute. But the key when you're keeping track of it yourself is to keep the percentages, and you'll understand why in a minute. The transcript can also have standardized test scores like the SAT, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But the key here is to understand that this is a record for every student that's enrolled in high school. Every student will have it, no matter their ability. So if they have some learning differences, if they're in even like send what would be equal to send education or something like that, they will have a record of what they've done. The goal is as you're going is that each year it becomes a little bit different or a little bit more varied as they grow into and head toward 18 and finishing. So if you're starting with Maths 1, whatever that entails for that student, then the next year should be Maths 2, and it should be that next level of difficulty, and so on and so forth for your different courses. But it's a valid proof of education, and that's the key here is that we're looking at proof of education for students because that's what people want to see. People in the UK, admissions places as well as workplaces and that kind of thing, they're used to seeing GCSEs and letters and numbers and scores for GCSEs. What we have to help them understand and learn is that this is a valid proof of education. It at the end, when it's the full 4 years, so that whole transcript that's finished out, it's generally equal to 5 GCSEs. Okay, so keep that in mind because that's going to be your core four, your math, science, English, and social studies, plus an elective is how they're getting 5 GCSE equality out of it. It's apples and oranges when you're looking at it, but when you go and dig deep, you can see the progression in difficulty and that kind of thing. Go ahead and move on. So one of the problems that we can run into is how does the national curriculum equate to the US high school coursework? Because for the national curriculum, it's typically And when we're for home educators, it's a 2-year course. So let's just say you're doing the GCSE for English. You can go ahead and go forward, Emma. You're doing a GCSE for English or for history in this case, for this example. We can compare and see how it would be done on a course for the national curriculum, how we might put it on a US transcript as a graded course. So if you took your GCSE British history class, which is anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to finish, typically taken by a student at the absolute youngest, 8th grade US. Um, so typically it would be 14. If they were really keen on history, then maybe 13. They're going to split that up into two courses because it essentially is a 2-year course when you add in the revision and all that type of thing. So you'd have British history, 1066 to 1700, and then modern British history, and you would get a credit and a grade for each year, and then you wouldn't sit the exam. So that's how you would, the UK exam is the one you wouldn't sit. So that's how you would compare. It's essentially just splitting them apart, all right, into valid sections or groups. So if you have an A-level course, it's the same thing. The A-level course, it's a 2-year course. It's going to be taken in those upper years of high school. In the US, that would be 11th and 12th grade. And so the first half of the book, you could split it right down the middle, most likely, or you'll find a natural break in the table of contents. And one would be for the first year, and the other would be for the second year. And then you would just title it properly on your transcript. The one piece here is that there's this indicator of honors, which if they have done exceptional work at the A level, then you could also add an honors in because the amount of rigor at an A level is so much more than a general level. It deserves that extra qualification on a US transcript. It would be called honors to just let the people reading the transcript know that they've done exceptional work toward that 180 hours rather than 120 hours, which is the basic minimum for a credit. But an A-level course is going to be more toward the 180 hours. So that's how you would split it up. And again, you'd get 2 credits. You wouldn't sit the exam, but your student is learning the same content as their peers here in the UK, or if it's an international curriculum that you're using within that, then they're international peers as well. So they're learning the same thing. You can go ahead and move forward, Emma. They're learning the same thing. We're just accounting for it differently, okay? So one of the other problems that comes up, and it's just a place where we have to learn to think just a little bit differently about this new idea of the transcript. The questions that come up are, what is a GPA? And how are letter grades calculated differently for the US transcript? Because they're calculated very differently than scores here in the UK for exams, okay? So go ahead and move ahead on that one. So when we're looking at this, the grades that you see here on this slide show a letter grade, a percentage grade in the middle, and then how that's translated to a 4.0 or yeah, the 4.0 scale, which is typically what's used in America for a transcript, as well as the reason I've chosen the one from the College Board is because that's who's running the SAT, and then those two pieces marry nicely together on your transcript if you're able to say this is what you were following as a guide for your marking and your grading, okay? So you can see here that you can get that an A is anywhere from 100% down to 90%, all right? And a C is down there in the 70s to down to 72%. And the 4-point scale is just it's just a way of kind of compartmentalizing an average of all of the course, but also then over the course of a student's academic career. They would say, like, at the end of the 4 years, your valedictorian is going to most likely have a 4 point, like a 3.7 to a 4.0 over all their courses. So they'll take those, all the courses, add them all up, make an average for a single number. But each course is also graded individually within that 4 point scale on a transcript. Go ahead and go forward and we'll look at this a little bit more. So some of the challenges, and Emma may end up going back to look at that other one. So when it feels right to go look at it again, go ahead and flip back to it.
Okay.
So one of the big challenges is that an A in the UK is very different than an A in America. Okay, so in the GCSE exams, an actual grade A requires a percentage uniform mark. It's this fancy term, and it has to be at least 80%. Okay, so go back. What's 80% in America, Emma? 80% in America is a B minus. Okay, so now go back forward again. So that's the raw score that's needed to achieve the and it varies by subject and year. So it's based on the testing pool, it's based on the questions, it's based on the raw score. Honestly, can be to get an A can be as low as 60 to 65%. That's if they don't throw out any questions in the exam. Go back and see what 60 to 65% is on the American scale. So if a student got 60 to 65%, they only maybe didn't even pass the class. Okay. So you can see it really is dramatically different. And these grades, from the American perspective, are given every semester and a final grade at the end of the year, not an exam grade that's on the day of an exam. It's a cumulative grade of all their work over the course of a year of the course, not a bunch of studying and a single mark for a single day of exam. Go ahead and go forward. Thank you. So when you're looking at this, when you're looking at this raw percentage grade, when roughly by subjects, an A is considered anywhere for math between 78 and 88 or above. Sciences, 75 to 85 or above. Language, 75 to 85 or above. And then the humanities, 72 to 82 or above. So you're looking at your mid 70s. If we go back, what's a mid 70s score on the American grading scale? You're looking at a C plus. And actually it equates properly because that is a C plus is a normal average grade. Anything above those is levels of better, right? Of more understanding, of greater and knowledge and ability. So that when you look at the average, that makes sense. But students using the transcript that want to catch the eye of an admissions board are going to need an A on a transcript, A's and B's. Okay. So that's where we have to be really careful how we mark those things. And that's why for our class, let's go back one more time to it.
Oops.
Um,
A minute.
There we go. So that's why this is the actual grading scales that we use at Arise. And we use the percentage grade. We don't look at the letter grades and we don't look at the 4 point scale. We use the percentage grades because that's the common denominator no matter where you're studying and what you're studying toward. If you're studying toward a UK exam, you can see where your predictive scores might land you. If you're studying for a transcript grade, you can see exactly what you're going to get and that kind of thing. So that's why we use this from the College Board as our anchor for marking and grading, no matter where the course is taking you. All right, we can carry on, head over to the next one. There we go. So we talked about the SAT, and I want to make sure that everybody understands first the difference between the SAT in the UK, which is an exam that's taken at the end of primary school before going into secondary school. that is very different and not at all the same as the SAT. And so when you hear it called the SAT, you know they're talking about the American Scholastic Assessment Test. If they don't, if someone says SAT to you, you really want to clarify with them, especially when you're talking with admissions boards. You want them to know you're talking about the SAT, which is completely different. It's the entrance exam used by most US colleges and universities to make admissions decisions. It's a multiple choice test that's a digital online exam now. They no longer are doing the paper version, but they have transitioned all the way to doing the digital and online version. And it's created and administered by the College Board, which would be equivalent to like your EdXL board or Cambridge or something like that. It's available as an in-person exam all over the world 6 to 8 times a year. So the beauty of it is that on exam day, everywhere in the world that is sitting the SAT is sitting it all on the same day. So you can take it anywhere it's offered, as long as you register in advance, of course, for that location. So if there's a date that falls while you're in France on holiday, take it there. It's going to be the same exam that you would take here or anywhere else, no matter where you're at. It's super affordable. For proof of education, it's about 120 US dollars, and that's with the add-on of the international fee that is typically added on. It's usually about, I think it's about $80 now to take it if you're in America.
Can I just say
Um,
something? Can I
yeah,
just I just want to say about this affordability. So with the SAT, that's the only exam you need to take. But if you are doing UK exams, each exam will be more than £120.
yeah,
So if you're doing
each
multiple,
individually.
each individual exam, it'll be
Yeah,
more than £120. If you find an exam centre that charges £120 for an IGCSE exam, grab them because that's cheap.
yeah.
So that just to contextualize what we mean by affordable. And
Yeah, so
yeah.
so the difference there is that the freebie part of it or the reduced part is that everything else is on the transcript to prove this is all the things you've studied, and the SAT is an objective proof of maths and language learning, just like you want your basic English and maths from for some of the apprenticeships and that kind of thing. So it's used by universities around the world for student applications and admissions, and it is highly successful for getting into any university that's willing to look at different qualifications and wanting to look at homeschoolers and home educators. And that's the key. They have pathways for all kinds of students to get in, and it's just leveraging those pathways to service and serve our home educating community. So go ahead and go forward and let's look at some of those. Okay, so before we get on to the leveraging, let's talk about exactly what is in the SAT. It's a little bit different. It's not an essay exam. You're not going to be writing an exam or doing a blue book. The subject exams no longer exist. Those were put to the side a few years back. So what it does cover is the writing and the reading for comprehension, vocabulary, and grammar skills. So the courses that we offer that point toward GCSE exams are going to certainly prepare the student well for the SAT as well. The same thing with the math. It's going to cover algebra, advanced math, problem solving, data skills, geometry, trigonometry, and so on. And so the classes that are in the GCSE format or even A-level format still serve the student for these exams and will allow them to prove their level of education incredibly affordably without those added individual exam pieces. So most of the questions are multiple choice, and I say that because there are some math questions where you actually have to enter the proper number. So it'll go through steps of a math problem, and you've got to put in the proper number for it. There's loads of exam practice tests online and loads of things to help students learn how to do well on it because it is a little bit different than what you might find in the UK for the regular traditional UK model. So what happens with these exams in the step two section here? There's two modules for each section. So there's two modules on the reading and writing, two modules on the math. The first module contains a broad, easy, medium, or hard questions, okay? And based on how they do in that first section, then it will adapt for the second module and serve up questions that are either more difficult or less difficult. So they really want to do their very best on the first part, and then that's going to set them up properly for the second level to go even further and broader in some of those. So it's a really unique model of how they do it. All right, so the idea of leveraging your options here with the US qualifications pathway, the beauty of it here at Arise is we've designed our classes regardless of pathway to be able to allow your children to just to learn a subject and make a decision later about where they're going to, if they're going to use the transcript, if they're going to sit the exam. You don't have to actually even decide that before signing up, or even halfway through. You can decide that in that second year of a course if you are undecided. Some families already know they're going to take the courses but put them on a transcript. Others come in thinking they will do the UK model. Something happens, maybe there's a long illness, or there's an injury, or there's a crisis of some sort, and they end up realizing that it might be better for them to not sit the exam, but to put their learning on a US transcript and go that route. So it's affordable, it's flexible, and it's accommodating. In addition to um, the not having to write essays is just the ability that there is accommodations allowed as well within the digital exam. You would need to follow up with them specifically if there are certain things that might be needed for you, but there are accommodations there. And then the other piece there is that to leverage, you want to use the UK exam style courses for learning subjects. Use your mid-year and final grades on the US transcript. Choose to not sit the UK exam, but do sit the SAT because you need that objective proof of, of education. Upload it all to UCAS or whatever you're using if you're outside the UK that is gathering that information. And then you prove your residency for financial purposes with the universities that you are applying to. And so as you can see, it's all about, oh no, the QR codes are not showing.
Oh,
That's weird. Okay, well maybe you can drop the links in the chat because the underlines are also links. So so for the record keeping there, we might have to do it after you
I'll do
back
it
out.
after.
Yeah. So record keeping is what it really comes down to for the US transcript, because what can happen is you can have a little bit of a course in one year, and they maybe do, let's just say they do a literature study or two literature studies their first year, like book studies, and then they do a writing course, and then they do a speech course. Let's just say that that's how they do their English and language arts. If I know for myself, if I hadn't kept a record every year, I would have gotten to the end going, "Now, what did they actually do 4 years ago or 5 years ago if they had a few classes early?" And so you really want to keep a record of all that they do. So this freebie for this session gives you everything you need to plan it out and to keep records of it so that once you get to the point of wanting to do the transcript, you kind of have it all there. It's just a matter of moving it over and getting it formatted nicely. So there's lots of log sheets and different ways to show you how to keep records as proof of education, um, for really different styles of learning, whether that's doing independent study or doing book study or projects. Um, Lots of different ways to do that. So lots of different logs there that can help you keep track of the magic number, which is 120 to 180 hours per subject. That doesn't, remember, hear my words, per subject, not per year for a subject. All right. So if at the end of 3 or 4 years you see that there is a bundle of things that they kind of dripped through over the course of 3 or 4 years, bundle it together, call it something, and count it because it does count. If they did, you know, 100 hours of dystopian reading and then another 80 hours of I don't know, some other kind of reading, then that is enough for a full year of English language and literature if you have evidence like book reports or a project or something like that, along with the log of all the books that they read and page numbers and that kind of thing. So it really is about keeping track of things. So I think my goal here was to try to go through and show it to you, but I don't think we're going to take time to do that today. You can go ahead and look through those yourself.
Sorry.
See, now this QR code worked. I don't know why the other ones didn't. That's
I'll
okay.
drop once we finish this, I'll drop
Yeah.
these links and I'll grab them.
So the last piece is that I recognize, go ahead and go forward, that it's kind of a fire hose. We certainly can't discuss the whole topic of the U.S. transcript or even academic coaching in general and helping you make decisions, the best decisions for your family. So what we're offering, starting after I get back from holiday, so on June 26th or when the slots will be available, is just a few free sessions to go and help you individually unpack your family's and your student's situation to help you choose classes or answer questions about one of the different pathways that you might have and that kind of thing, and just give you an opportunity to